This one got like 50,000 views on Twitter, and it asks, why did Andrew Ryan, which made a secluded capitalist utopia where only talented and wealthy people can live, what on earth went wrong? And I'll tell you what went wrong, right? The writer went wrong. Like, this is fiction. It's not like a case of human history or anything like that, because if we look at a country that was like a capitalist utopia, you get the United States. So it has happened throughout human history. Like, there is a stable system which can make sure that you have a libertarian country and it doesn't collapse. And the people within it don't end up like the people in the Soviet Union. So this is fiction, okay? And what's really interesting is that in Bioshock 2, it makes fun of socialism. So it's a socialist utopia. Bioshock 3 makes fun of theocracies. But Bioshock 2, for some reason, isn't ever being mentioned on why socialism doesn't work. But Bioshock 1 is often being brought, and this is also due to the fact that the author inspired himself from the books of Rand. Atlas Shrugged, and that's why they wanted to say, oh, well, a libertarian utopia, a place where the government doesn't intervene, can never work. And alright, well, let's look at the writings. He makes a... So you have Andrew Ryan, right? And he says, no gods, only men, and then makes a big fuck you golden statue of himself. He has a liberalist utopia where you're not allowed to leave. You know, like, your basic human rights are being infringed by the government, which is the right to leave. And then you have, like, only talented and wealthy get to live, but, you know, the problem is that the talented and the wealthy don't like cleaning the sewers. Like, Picasso doesn't like doing the gardening, and someone has to do those things. So, like, this would be, like, the big concerns that I would have, first and foremost, right? Because it's not a libertarian utopia from the premise of the writing. Like, from the get-go, you notice that there is actually a government, and they do actually crack down and step in on things. But even with that, like, why did the society fail? Like, why did it collapse? It's the plasmids. That's why. Right? Like, they literally have to bring in a sci-fi drug which turns people into zombies and gives them superpowers in order to justify why this society would collapse. Because I think, like, they could have dealt with Fontaine, and they could have dealt with, like, the other problems, because, like, every single nation on Earth has its problems at some point. It's protests, it's riots, but, like, the reason that it collapsed isn't because of Fontaine, isn't because of any of that. No, it's simply because of the plasmids, right? So the author itself has to bring them on, like, some fictional thing that doesn't even exist in the real world, in order to justify why this libertarian society would collapse. So a lot of people get really upset when you point it out. Now, some people would say, well, plasmids are actually an analogy to drugs. So, instead of plasmids, you could have, like, something like cocaine or any other drug that exists in the real world. But, like, we know that wouldn't cause a society to collapse, simply because, like, if you play, for example, Red Dead Redemption, you can see that in the United States, they used to have, like, chewing gum with cocaine. And when you're looking into it, you realize, holy shit, that's actually historically accurate. So, societies used to have drugs in the past. Now, obviously, they're not beneficial, and obviously, they do cause a lot of harm. But it's not on the level of harm that would bring upon the collapse of a civilization, even close to what we saw in Rupture. So, no, like, that's not the issue. And again, like, the main issue I do think is the fact that it's not a libertarian society. Like, the fact that you cannot leave, and the writer says, well, yeah, but, like, he didn't want the KGB or the CIA to know about Rapture's existence, and it's like, alright, but, like, that's just justification now. Like Andrew Ryan behaves very erratically throughout the whole thing. At one point, like, he doesn't want to stop Fontaine, and he doesn't want to stop the use of plasmids because, like, he's got his morals and he's got his ideals. But then he wants to stop people from leaving, and at this point, like, he doesn't have his morals and ideals. So it doesn't really make sense, a lot of the decisions that he makes throughout the game. Again, it feels as if the writer wanted to show that this is a really bad society. So characters behave in ways that aren't really coherent with their ideology, only to push the story to the place where the society of Rapture collapses. And again, like he has to introduce complete sci-fi elements in order to do it, which obviously are the plasmids. And you know, it's a good story. I mean, I'm not saying that it's bad or anything, but to look at it as a political analogy and to say, well, yeah, like libertarianism wouldn't work because did you not see what happened in Bioshock? And I'm like, sorry, but I know human history. Like, libertarianism has been tried and it has worked. The New World, the colonies in the New World, they weren't controlled by a central government to the level where people are being controlled today. Like, they were far more libertarian than people from today are. And by the way, you know, like, even in Rapture, if I'm not mistaken, there's like a point where they talk about how people had to pay 50% of what they make in taxes. And I'm like, okay, but like, how is that a libertarian society then? Like, if you pay literally that much in taxes, how can you say that the government has little influence over the lives of people? Is that really a libertarian place now, is it? So yeah, I guess, I mean, it's also interesting that they don't talk about Bioshock 2, as I mentioned in the beginning, because it criticizes, I wouldn't necessarily like say communism, although probably that's what it's trying to convey. It criticizes fascism as well, right? So like any type of groupthink ideology, I guess like cults can also be added into this. It was creating like this idea that we're all a family, we're all in this together, right? Like you don't want to be alone, you want to be part of the group, you gotta do whatever the group tells you. And at the top of the group was this psychologist, if I remember the story correctly. It was a very interesting one, but it's definitely like a criticism towards any collectivist ideology. And for some reason, video game journalists absolutely hate and despise Bioshock 2. I don't know why though. And it's also really interesting because in Bioshock 2, the way you behave to your little girl, right, like to your little daughter, is the way she grows up. So like if you do a lot of evil acts, if you behave in a evil way, she copies that. So like she becomes ruthless and cold as you are. But if you behave nice and kind to people, she becomes nice and kind as well when she grows up. So it's like this really cool thing that shows that you are actually an example to the new generation. So if you behave in a despicable manner, then the new generation becomes despicable as well. I really love that in the game, you know, like that moral compass that doesn't really exist in modern video games anymore. Like they usually have like the same morality. It's like oppression, bad, bad. Straight white man, bad, bad. Like that's the type of morality you get from modern games. But it used to be a time where you would get like more deeper philosophical things. It's like, be very careful how you behave around kids, especially if they're your own, because they may copy your behavior, emulate it, and then they will end up the same way as you, and you may not like it. I genuinely love that morality from Bioshock 2. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and don't forget to check the pinned comment in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later. Take care.